Hello, folks. Welcome to the Weekly Spinner Rack. I'm your host, Chris. What is this? This is going to be a heck of a show about comics. Can you hear that? I've got some background music going for you. But we don't have to have that all night. Dip it out. Bye, music. Goodbye. I hope you all heard it. We're going to have fun tonight because there's some fun, goofy news to talk about. We'll get to that. Very small amount of comics that I picked up personally. But one thing I do want to sort of talk about actually is how similar some of the Ultimate and Absolute stuff are from Marvel and DC, which is a coincidence, but I think it's based on something. And I think I'll probably just spend some time at the end drawing. I mapped out a little something, and I figured, you know what? If I'm going to draw here, and I'm not generally selling my art, every once in a while, but not often, might as well just slowly peck away at drawing like my own comic. So let's go ahead and give some shout-outs to folks that are in the chat room. Hello to Lissandro and Christopher. I approve of the name. Hello, Dr. Shubil and Wayne and Chemdog, and as always, GT Key Comic, always an early entrant. Hello, Game Over Club, West Coast Day Vengers, friend of the show. Hello to Rami. Let's see who else we've got. We've got Kevin here and Majesty. I think I said hello to Chemdog, but I'm not sure, so I'm putting you up there anyway. Hello to someone and Rick and Beowulf. Hello to all of you. And if I'm missing you, it's just because I'm scrolling as quickly as I can. Hello, Owens Reviews, and Joe Dent, and Jordy Mac, Philip Arsena, Sherb. Yeah, I'm going to draw tonight. Ultimates 8, is that what I was just showing? Yeah, that dropped this past Wednesday. So a few days ago, not quite a week. I was about to say a year. Good Lord. Need a little more caffeine. Hello, John. Hola. Let's see. Huge fan. Well, I'm hugely appreciative. So, tell you what. Let's just get into it. Let's just get into the news of the week. I'm going to add something here. Let's see. Should I be big or should that be big? What do you... Whoa! 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 What do you prefer? Whoa! I can't decide. We'll leave it like that for now. What a thumbnail. Just knocking it out of the park. Let's see. Real quick, talking about some DC Comics delays. These three that you see at the top is Action Comics 1082, Green Lantern, Fractured Spectrum #1, and Black Lightning #3 were all originally solicited to comic book stores as coming out this week, this coming Wednesday. But DC has announced that they've just delayed those three books to the following week, the 15th. Heads up if you read any of those. As long as I'm talking about DC delayed books, I just had a couple others worth mentioning. The Nice House by the Sea, that's a pretty prominent book. Their sole James Tynion title. And that was originally going to come out last November. So that one's, I don't know why that one's delayed. No news on that, but that's also going to come out the 15th. And finally, Batman Off-World #6. That book has obviously been battling its share of delays. Supposed to be out last August originally. Now it's set for February 5th. I really enjoy that title, by the way, Batman Off-World. I think it's really cool. But anyway, it's just dealing with its own issues. Just explaining that none of these delays appear to have anything to do with things like distribution or shipping. Obviously, Canada has a ton of shipping issues right now. They're dealing with a postal strike. Haven't heard of any printing errors or anything like that. I think it's all just, some of it could be scheduling and some of it could be like artist or writer delays. So yeah, a couple of those later than others. Moving on, Marvel announced a new teen team. These guys, the new champions. I sort of get it. You know, they've refurbished that brand, I suppose you could argue, because they had that champion series with Ms. Marvel and Cyclops and Amadeus Cho and Nova that did all right for a while. But I kind of, just because of when I grew up, I have to admit, I miss. Oh, hold on a second. What was the team with Night Thrasher and Speedball and Namorita? Young Warriors, right? New Warriors, Young Warriors. I'm thinking of Young Avengers. Anyway, so what am I talking about here? They announced this team with the Champions brand, and it is obviously, if you are recognizing any of these, that's very likely because these were all characters that were created as hypothetical sidekicks for a series of variant covers that Marvel did. Well, now they're actual characters. And two of them have already been used in comics. This Witch character, Amaranth, has been used in Scarlet Witch. And the one Peach Momoko designed, Maystorm, she actually created that character with like a background and everything for her Ultimate X-Men book. So anyway, what happens to comics printed in Canada because of tariffs? Presumably, I would just bring the prices up, which, yeah, that's a challenge. We do not know exactly what will happen. Also, this team will start with Liberty, she's there, Hellrune, Moon Squire, and Cadet Marvel. And then eventually they're going to add some of these other heroes like Amaranth and I forget all their names, to be honest. But yeah, they're going to just slowly work them in. It's by Steve Fox, Ivan Fiorelli. Good team as far as people that Marvel works with these days. Comes out this week. Could be fun. But yeah, Marvel's had a lot of different teen teams over the years. You know, there were the New Mutants, there were the New Warriors. There was technically, I think you could call Power Pack, you know, a kid team. And then they've had things like Young Avengers, and more recently, they reused the Champions name for like a bunch of teen heroes. I think that the teen team is a trope in comics that actually dates back to the earliest days when guys like Jack Kirby and Joe Simon were creating the Newsboy Legion or the Boy Commandos, going all the way through to, you know, the original X-Men were all teenage characters, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And it's typically got sort of 4 important roles plus an adult mentor character. I don't know if this book has an adult in it, but it is definitely a type of a trope within comics to have a teen team. It's a trope in comics. I've got an episode about it on Comic Tropes, the teen team and the history of it. Oh yeah, the Teen Brigade. You know, there's tons of examples, just to be clear. Young Justice, Teen Titans, all super popular. Mr. Miracle Family? Do you mean Mr. Miracle Family? I mean, I think of the Shazam family, but yeah. Oh, definitely. That's the Ghost Rider on roller skates character's helmet does have some similarities to Radiant Black, and the color scheme doesn't help it, but yeah. Moving on, though. Marvel has canceled their retailer calendars. This is like obviously not earth-shattering news that affects any of us, but I've got a bunch of tidbits in this. Let's see. So this started back in 2010. Marvel began creating calendars that they would give for free to comic book shops. And of course, the point of that is, you know, to get their branding out, and they would hint at events that were coming up. You know, last year's had Blood Hunt, for instance. What was this? 2020, they had some sort of future Iron Man event, etc. And they'd have little things sprinkled throughout the calendar year. This year, Marvel has ended that 15-year tradition. So, maybe it wasn't popular and they didn't feel like they were getting any value out of it, or maybe, companies are worried about potential increasing printing costs and they're looking to make cuts where they can without, before they really affect the readers and the stores like that order this stuff. So, until we see the comic book publishers stop doing free comic book day, I think we don't need to worry too much. But if we start seeing that they plan on not doing free comics for free comic book day and that Halloween event, then we'll know that there are significant challenges in making money. Well, as soon as it was found out, all the different retailers were like, "Hey, wait a minute! I didn't get a calendar for Marvel this year." I found this on eBay. There are people selling the last 15 years worth of Marvel calendars. I still use a physical calendar, actually. Yeah, I like having a visual reminder. I've got it in my kitchen in a certain place. It really does help me think ahead for what's coming. So I need physical reminders like that are just in my line of sight. And then I get one that has pretty imagery that I like. Sometimes, let's see. So this past year, it was all pictures of Japan. The year before, it was drawings by Hugo Pratt. So I like things like that still. Ancient Mayans predicted the Marvel calendar would end in 2025. Or is that just as far as they felt they needed to go before they were like, well, we can create some more calendars later? I'm just having fun. The Uncanny Experience fan event is returning. So it must be pretty popular because this is its third year. That takes place July 12th and 13th in Minneapolis, Minnesota. The event lets people that buy the tickets attend classes on mutant culture. They've got, the bedrooms done up like a campus on the X Mansion. They've got, what do you call it? Not quite escape room, but something like that with clues that you can gather. They've got an initiation into the Hellfire Club. The theme this year specifically, they always have a theme. It's going to be celebrating the 25th anniversary of X-Men Evolution. And then I had to think about that. I was like, 25 years? And I was like, oh yeah, it is 2025. All right. Anyway, so they're going to have some directors and voice actors from that cartoon as guests this year. And if you don't recognize it, this is a club in what do you call it, in Minneapolis, and they rent it out and decorate it to be the mansion. But it works. No Bryan Singer there. I guess if you put him in, that would become the Danger Room. Thank you. I will add a laugh track at some point for banger jokes like that. Moving on. Marvel has some free comic book day plans that they're hinting at with some of these images. So they've shared what I'm sharing here. Free comic book day this year is May 3rd, and it includes their mutant event, which will be XVX, which is bonkers to think that that's an event that's going to take place in May when you consider right now they're already having Uncanny X-Men and X-Men have a 4-issue crossover where they don't get along. But I guess that's the next event. And then there's this image for an event called Ultimate Incursion. And we have seen a version of this scene before, back when the new Ultimate Universe was getting built. Maker, or the Reed Richards from the 1610 Ultimate Universe, came to Miles Morales and was like, hey, you're another refugee of the same universe. You remember it. He's like, how about I create a new universe? I'm going to offer you the chance to come join me. And he's like, no, you're a supervillain. Screw you. But what we're seeing different here is that Maker handed him some sort of a blank card. Presumably, writing will magically appear at some point and we will see what happens with that. Yes, the Stranger Room, exactly. That would have also worked. I would have also accepted the joke. I think the Free Comic Book Day X-Men story is meant to set up a Ms. Marvel book by the Hive Mind, where Kamala finds herself. Oh, sorry, she would be Kamala, where Kamala finds herself with the Giant Size era team. Oh, interesting. Well, with the team that's shown there, I guess that makes sense. Oh, how dare you use that slur? I don't know. I'm personally pretty curious about the Ultimate Universe one and tying in Miles. I like that they've just got a few threads that do connect it to the original Ultimate Universe. Like this is a fresh series of stories, but I kind of like that there is a little bit of continuity to play with if they ever feel that they've got a great idea. Yes, exactly. They're using recycled calendars to print these things, and Marvel's going to have 5 books because they have this Amazing Spider-Man one. Also has the Ultimate Universe stuff. This is the X-Men book. Wait, no, that isn't the X-Men book. That's the Voices book. Fantastic Four and X-Men. That's got the X-Men thing in it. Obviously, they always have a kids book these days, so that's Spidey and His Amazing Friends, and of course, they always have a Star Wars book. Since I'm on Free Comic Book Day, this is not humongous news, but I'll just mention it. A couple books changed their ratings. Black Mirror is going to be a new comic by Twisted Comics, and that was originally solicited as being all ages. They've updated that to be mature. Intriguingly, it says that it's specifically going to be an adaptation of the San Junipero episode of the show, which a lot of people will argue was the best episode of the show, but it was also one of the more positive and happy things. I don't know what would be objectionable about that one. You know, there was really no overt violence or scares. It was a creepy bit of an idea. I don't want to give it away, but pretty weird. I'm glad to hear that some, it should be Dennis Camp or Jonathan Hickman, somebody like intimately tied into the Ultimate Universe that would do any sort of event for it. So that makes sense. Yes, Dee Snider gets a piece. He gets a sliver. Also, you see that there's a second comic here. That's Oni now has the license to use the EC Comics logo, and they've been putting out horror books and stuff. This one, Blood Type, was originally solicited as mature, but has been downgraded in terms of seriousness to just teen. And this is just interesting because it's going to follow one person. So that's actually the first solo book that has had the EC branding. Otherwise, everything has been horror anthologies. But this one will follow one person. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, right. It had some LGBTQ component to it, a huge component. But that if that moves it all the way up to mature instead of teen, I think that whoever's coming up with these ratings, I'm pretty sure it's the publisher, that's a little over the top. I'm not usually a fan of a rating system, except to help guide people into understanding sort of what type of thing it is. As long as it's not self-censorship, it's just declaring that it's something, that's not the worst. Not like they don't submit it to the Comics Code Authority, that's defunct. There's no official organization, but Free Comic Book Day brings in a lot of people that are not familiar with comics. It really does, as well as young readers. And so the publishers are trying to tell the stores, hey, this is what kind of a book it is. It'll help them decide how many they want to order and whether they're comfortable, just putting it on a table out front for everybody, or if they want to put some of them, in the back of the shop or behind the counter, anything like that. So I understand that they just basically don't want to just tell everybody, hey, everything's for everybody. And you have a 5-year-old pick up a copy of both Spidey Friends and, Blood Type. And then the parents are like, this is horrific. Who knows? This is a little bit of a sad one, but I wanted to mention it because I'm trying to do it in a respectful way, like to say, this is somebody that was part of a comics community, and we should remember that. This gentleman here is Warren J. Cox, and he founded Galaxy of Comics in Van Nuys, California back in, I believe it was 2009. The store did very well. I remember in 2021, I was about to say 3 years ago, now we're like basically at 4, the store was so successful, he actually bought the store next to him, and the store expanded. You don't always get to hear stories like that, like where a comic store or comic shop, Chris, one of them will work. We'll go with comic shop. It was doing well enough that, he could expand. But anyway, he died in a vehicle accident on December 28th. Not his fault. Not necessarily anybody's fault per se, but he was riding an e-scooter at the Topanga Mall down there in Van Nuys, and a young driver, a lot of the reports say that he was 17. He took a wrong turn, basically, and he ran over Warren and got Warren trapped under his SUV. And so he basically drove over him, unfortunately. Now, Galaxy of Comics announced on their social channels that for now they are planning on staying open and maintaining their normal hours. So, I guess they must have managers that have stepped up, or the estate of Warren has stepped up. So if you shopped in that area, I'm sorry for your loss. That's terrible. It sounds like it was a successful store. It sounds like Warren was liked by the people in the area. And the community just mourns the loss. It's too bad. By all accounts, the poor kid that hit him, didn't try to run or anything. He stayed there. He cooperated with authorities. It sounds like it's just a tragic accident, unfortunately. I'll try to move on to some positive news, but I just wanted to share that. All right. Okay, big change tonally, but it's about comic shops. So I was like, okay. Tonally, that's a challenge for this guy. Thematically, going from one comic shop story to another comic shop story makes sense. Kevin Smith is developing a comic shop show. Obviously, he had one before, Comic Book Men. And if any of you guys recognize this guy out front, that was a guy that I used to consider a friend. I haven't been in touch with him for a long time now. That's Phoenix Jones, Seattle's real-life superhero. And in fact, the thing I plan on drawing tonight is the first page of telling my story of spending a year patrolling with Phoenix as a superhero. The fights that we got into and broke up, the chases, the arrests, the emergency aid, helping people. Anyway, at the time, Phoenix is a hard guy to get a hold of. He doesn't have a lot of, he doesn't have his own website or check his socials very much. So the producers had reached out to me, and I put them all in touch for that. But anyway, so what's the new show that Kevin's developing? Well, it's for NBC, a major network, and he said that it was inspired by the comic shop that he runs in Red Bank, Jersey, where he grew up. That's Jay and Silent Bob's Secret Stash. I've never been. I'm a little curious to check it out someday, just out of curiosity. And the show is called Local Heroes. The premise is that a group of comic book store regulars band together to solve crimes in their hometown. Is that a comedy? Is that a true, or is that a crime procedural? Is it a mix? I don't know. I couldn't find more information than that. It's a weird enough idea that I kind of like it, but I want to know more. But there's also some other producers involved that have done a bunch of successful shows at NBC, mostly comedies. So yeah. A procedural comedy could be hilarious. Have you guys ever seen the it's on Netflix, and I'm trying to remember the name of the actor that it stars. Who's the guy that played Job in Arrested Development? He used to be married to Amy Poehler. Will Arnett from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles fame, right? Will Arnett did a remake of a British comedy show on Netflix, and the premise is He's a police detective that always gets a new recruit who's like a name actor or celebrity of some sort, like Marshawn Lynch. My buddy Ken Jeong was on it. Conan O'Brien. And so they have to solve a murder mystery, but the only person that doesn't have the script is that recruit, the guest for that week. And they have to improvise through the scenes and then actually try to solve the crime at the end. It's such a funny show. What was it called? Will Arnett, Netflix. Murderville. You guys got to check it out if you haven't. Murderville is legit super, super funny. I laugh out loud at that one. The Conan O'Brien one is pretty great. The Marshawn Lynch one is pretty great. Yeah, anyway. I'll get back to the news. I just went down a detour there. That's not the one I want. How about, yeah, that's better. Because then you can still see me. We'll see if Local Heroes, it hasn't been picked up. It's just in development. Bunch of new stuff went into the public domain. Happens every year, but we're getting to the point where more recognizable stuff is starting to enter the public domain. So 1929 is like the magical year. Stuff that was created in 1929 has now entered the public domain as of this year. But I just want to be clear, not necessarily ideas and stuff with those characters or books or movies that came after that year. Like that would still be protected. Some of the things that we will all recognize that have entered the public domain, Tintin, done an episode about him. A dozen more Mickey Mouse animations, including the first one where he talks. I think it was called like Carnival Kid or something with K's. Buck Rogers and Popeye. That's pretty cool. That said, Popeye did take a while to develop. Like, and Tintin, for instance, we're like, okay, there's Tintin and Snowy, and he's like a kid reporter that goes on adventures. But all the supporting characters like Captain Haddock, Professor Calculus, the Thompson twins, not the band, the actual characters that the band named themselves after. Anyway, so like that later stuff, not available, but the initial idea and look, that is available. Buck Rogers has technically apparently been in the public domain for a while because the copyright wasn't properly renewed in the early years. So it actually has technically been, but like there's a little gray area. We'll know now like that early stuff is definitely available. Yeah, Eric Larson loves grabbing the public domain stuff and rolling it into Savage Dragon. More power to him. Tijuana Bible movie on track. I'm still working slowly on a Tijuana Bibles episode of the show. Yeah, 10 more years for Batman, but only something like 8 for Superman? 9? Might be 9. But again, even then, when we get, like, say, Superman, that's a Superman that doesn't have kryptonite or Jimmy Olsen or the ability to fly. You know, he just jumps. So there's very specific things that come. Hey, how's my sister doing? I hope you're getting over some of your jet lag. She was on a trip and now back east. I hope you're doing all right. You could do legally some sort of a Tintin Popeye meetup. And I mean, honestly, I think that something like that actually sounds somewhat fun to cross over some of these public domain characters, potentially. The things that just never interest me, but seem like the first ideas every time is a horror movie based on this. I think that I'm not even kidding. I think I heard that there are 3 horror movies with Popeye in development right now. And that's overkill. You know, we got that with Winnie the Pooh the other year. It's just the first place they always go. Oh, man. I'm a huge fan of Popeye. E.C. Cigar was a great cartoonist. Did a great mix of comedy and character work and sort of action adventure. So Popeye, you could argue, was almost the first superhero in a sense, because eventually, like it was like something around 1931, he started getting super strength from eating spinach. You know, the super strength aspect, a little bit like a superhero, and he has an outfit that he always wears. So there's some hallmarks of that. And yeah, like stuff like the Phantom is also an early example, but there's a lot about Popeye that's like a superhero. Yeah, I'm sure that they'll all be top-notch, high-quality stuff. Oh yeah, horror is a fantastic genre for making an affordable movie that can still be very good. I mean, there's so many good horror movies out there, but the idea of just like rushing out one with, you know, these characters, I don't know, it just doesn't do anything for me. Yeah, exactly. For folks that don't know exactly what Banana Bandit is talking about, cartoonist DC Sigar had been doing a comic strip called Thimble Theater for many years before he introduced Popeye. Popeye was not the main character. He took over because he was such a well-rounded, like an interesting character. But it was originally about Olive Oil and her brother Castor Oil and the other people that lived around town, like Wimpy. But the adventure and stuff with Popeye, that didn't come for several years. It's a very unique movie, but in retrospect, it's kind of awesome how big a fan of comics Robin Williams was. All right, moving on. Oh, I almost forgot. Fabrice Sapolsky, who is the co-creator of Spider-Man Noir, among other things, he has announced a Kickstarter for a new Tintin story. It's going to be set in the modern day, and it's going to be called The Big Lie. Beyond that, I don't know much more about it, but that's obviously going to probably be the first comic book with Tintin in 2025. An Arkansas judge struck down a comics ban, although it was really, he was striking down a bigger law than that. But I think that this is a win for comics in general. So, federal district court judge struck down and permanently enjoined an Arkansas law that had aimed to ban gender-affirming care for trans youth. The judge found that the law violated the constitutional rights of trans youths, their parents, their medical providers, and effectively, the stuff that sort of relates to this show anyway, this will now allow libraries and bookstores in Arkansas to again carry graphic novels like this one, Genderqueer, has been like, a huge target by the far right. And when they try to entail these rights and stuff, they've also been going after libraries, schools, bookstores to not carry these books. So anyway, just wanted to say Arkansas got a win there. And, I can't think of a single book that should be banned. If the government or anybody else tells you they don't want you reading a book, that makes me want to read it because I am so curious what's in it. It doesn't mean that I'm going to believe and follow everything that I read. I'll take it into account that somebody doesn't think it's a good idea. But anyway, I've heard a lot of great things. I haven't read it. I've heard good things. Thank you, Dumpster Daddy. Funny name. Thank you for the super chat. Someone pointed it out. Tintin is public domain, but not Captain Haddock. I was saying that. Who do we replace him with? Popeye. Well, that's sort of what I'm talking about, how you could merge some of these public domain characters together. I mean, technically you could throw in Steamboat Willie, but I mean, a talking mouse with human characters, I don't know if that really fits well. I hate book banning. But thank you again for the super chat. And very, very nice. It's a decent idea, too. It really is. Librarians generally care so much they're like teachers. There are people, they know that they're not going to get like rich and famous generally with these jobs. They do it because of their love of spreading for librarians knowledge and stories. For teachers, just ways of thinking, education. They do it because they're passionate about it, and that's kind of noble. There's certain jobs that I look at and I think, in general, people are people, individuals are individuals, but in general, there are career paths that feel noble to me, because it's like, ideally, if you're doing it right, you're doing it for the betterment of society. And I think, doctors, astronauts are a specific type of scientist that I'm like, I've never seen like an evil astronaut. Like, there've been a couple weirdos, but not like an outright evil one. I don't know. And I think that librarians are like, yeah, I think that they're good people that are trying to help. The community should be able to determine, but as soon as state laws get involved, people get scared of getting sued. And yes, it can be purchased too, but while, say, a Barnes & Noble would probably be comfortable still selling it, your average mom and pop store, like that's their, they own just that one bookstore. When there's laws like this, they will frequently decide to take the book aside, at least temporarily, because they don't want to get sued. That's all I'm talking about. Man, I used to love, when I was growing up, I love going to library book sales. Things like where they're like, they just like take out a ruler and they're like, oh, it's like 10 inches high, that's $10. That kind of a thing. Love that stuff. I found so many cool, weird books that way. Let's see. I sent you a copy of my comic, Six Gun Gorilla, Long Days of Vengeance. Well, that's very exciting. Thank you. Thank you. Excited to check it out. Jim Shooter had a 90s comic that didn't come out, and now it looks like it will. And I don't think it's Jim that's actually running this. I didn't really see any involvement from him specifically. But what are we talking about? Back in 1994, Jim Shooter started Defiant Comics. He'd been pushed out of his attempt to sort of buy a bigger ownership share of Voyager Communications, which owned Valiant. He basically founded and built Valiant. I don't think that there's any arguing against that. But he got pushed out, essentially. He got pushed out of Valiant, so he started another comics imprint, Defiant. And he actually took a bunch of the talent, from the best talent anyway, from Valiant with him. For guys like David Lapham followed him. And again, he was going to try to create a new sort of connected sci-fi world. They produced one book that was given away for free, Warriors of Plasm. It was included, I remember, in Previews magazine, and I don't know if Wizard gave away a free ash can of it. They at least gave away some cards. But then here's what happened. I'll just focus on me for a sec to tell this. So, Marvel UK published a book called Plasmer. She was, just whatever. She was a superhero, Plasmer. Yeah, we all remember Plasmer, right? So they went after Jim Shooter for having a book called Warriors of Plasm, saying this will confuse people. So that was a court case. And while Defiant Comics and Jim Shooter won, they had to spend over $300,000 in legal fees, and it was a new enough, small enough company. It killed them. It bankrupted them. So there was going to be a crossover event. It never got published. Let me jump back to that. Wait. What was I using? I keep forgetting that one. All right. So now you've got a little bit of the background. So now the event was called Schism, subtitle, Be Careful What You Dream. That's going to feature Jim Shooter's original plot, remastered artwork, over 160 pages. It's going to be available. It is right now on Kickstarter. They're looking to raise like $60-some thousand. Today they were at over $15,000. It goes all the way through March 2nd. So they've got like a 2-month long campaign. So They're going to release all 4 issues, and that does include art by some people that we still know today. Like, this is 30 years old. Charlie Adler, David Lapham, J.G. Jones, some others. I just think that that's kind of impressive, the people that they have behind it. And there's a link if you were curious about it. I never thought I'd see Defiant Comics in the news, unless somebody was doing a retrospective of the career of David Lapham or the career of Jim Shooter. Fine. But yeah, so if you read this stuff back then, or if you just really enjoyed Jim Shooter's style of writing, keep in mind, he did kind of create the first big comics event with Secret Wars. And if you want to argue that there were like precursors to that, he also worked on Contest of Champions. But, that was like a 12-issue on its own series that had lasting repercussions. And then he did that again when he was at Valiant with the Unity event. He was very known for having tight continuity between titles. Like, there was shared stuff, and he was like an editor that was like very hands-on for that stuff. It's wild to think that it was technically over 30 years ago that it was supposed to come out. Yeah. I'm glad somebody else knows what I'm talking about when I talk about Plasma. So, if you loved it, there you go. It was really happening at about the same time, but I think Secret Wars did kick off just a little sooner, if I'm remembering right. But they were both in that like 1984 through 1986 period. Yes, he didn't, like, just to be clear, not every connected new universe that he created worked well. New Universe did not succeed. I think that there were 1 or 2 good books in there. There were also 1 or 2 really crappy ones, like Kickers Incorporated, about a bunch of football kickers that got superpowers. Not really awesome. An editorial cartoonist quit over what she believes is censorship. This was the cartoon that she had submitted. Let's talk about that. Pulitzer-winning editorial cartoonist Ann Talnaas, I'm probably mispronouncing her last name. She announced Friday that she quit her job at the Washington Post after pushback against a cartoon that criticized owner Jeff Bezos. As you can see, you've got like all the big rich guys bowing down to Trump. So, Talnaas wrote on her Substack, quote, "While it isn't uncommon for editorial page editors to object to visual metaphors within a cartoon if it strikes that editor as unclear or isn't correctly conveying the message intended by the cartoonist, such editorial criticism was not the case regarding this cartoon. To be clear, there have been instances where sketches have been rejected or revisions requested, but never because of the point of view inherent in the cartoon's commentary." So, she got this cartoon rejected and said, "Yeah, I'm done." I don't know. There's let's just say there have long been a couple ties between the Trump organization and big shareholders on Disney. So, like, you're right that Disney kind of goes its own way, but there's some uncomfortable connections here and there. Exactly. And it's not necessarily the company per se, it is the people running the company. Anne has been around for ages. I'm sure she'll get another venue for her cartoons. Yeah. Hey, all I can say is that newspapers have an incredible history of giving their staff cartoonists a lot of leeway in what they can say. Unless it's like outright offensive, newspapers have a very long history of letting them make comments that are sort of like biting the corporate donor's hand. But we see some of that in other shows too. That, like, for instance, HBO has Last Week Tonight, right, with John Oliver. He jokes about HBO and their bosses all the time, like really biting satirical stuff. So anyway, I feel like, with the right jokes, you should be able to say what you want. And if somebody else wants to write an editorial piece saying, no, this is why I disagree with this, that's fully within the paper's right to print that as well. Look, is it questionable, like, specifically drawing, like, the owner, like, doing that? I mean, you have to know that there is some sort of a small risk to your job. But anyway, she did it on her own terms. She got the cartoon rejected, and felt that it was censorship, so she quit. We're almost done with the news, but I've got a couple manga pieces I wanted to share. One is that Dan Da Dan doubled its circulation, and they doubled it fast. You guys know I have talked up this as being one of my favorite books. It made my top 10 list of the year. I like it a lot. I think it's funny. I think that the action art is so detailed. It's incredible. But listen to this. So, this manga by Yokonobu Tatsu had its circulation doubled by the anime that just came out, the adaptation. So in October, there were 4 million copies of this relatively new manga in circulation. 4 million copies. Not bad. It's only been out for, in English for a little over a year. At Jump Festa 2025, just had that, one day after season 1 ended, it was shared that the manga series had surpassed 8 million copies in circulation. That strikes me as indicating that the anime adaptation is ridiculously popular. It doubled how many copies of the book were sold. And yeah, a couple new Tankobon issues came out while season 1 was around, but it was only something like 8 or 9 episodes. So that's like, yeah, it's basically like a 2-month period. The book sold another 4 million copies in 2 months. Yes, it's good. 180 chapters and going. I love it too. I like the anime a lot as well. I think it was really, really just so many areas that it's good. Still to come, season 2. Dang Da Dan. Just pretty amazing, like, number jump. So if you see other comics fans talking about this, it's because it just went through an explosive period in the last couple months. The best that I've ever read, you could grade it on like so many different things. It would just be like, also asking like what's the best comic that I've read. I would say if you put a gun to my head and I had to just pick one, I might pick Akira. Mostly for the art, to be honest, but the story's great too. Others that are very high up for me personally include Slam Dunk, Berserk, anything by Naoki Urasawa, like Pluto, 20th Century Boys, Monster. That stuff's all way high up there. The Jaws manga that I misplaced and I still need to find. I always lean towards recommending the manga first because that's what came first and that's my favorite version of stories. But they're both very, very good. They're both very, very good. I like Death Note a lot. I think that the manga was paced a little slow in the middle. There was like an era where I felt like it was treading water a little bit. I actually really like the live action duology of movies that adapted the series. You'd think, like, how can all that story be condensed? But I thought that they did it pretty well for the live action movie series. But I do like Death Note quite a bit. And I really love, actually, for manga, I forget the creators' names fully off the top of my head, but I really love their book, Bakuman, about two high school friends. One's an artist, one's a writer, that team up and decide that they want to become like the best manga creators and break into the industry and be successful. And it's just a really wonderful story. Dun, 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 dun. I've been hearing a lot of people recommend Die Dark. I haven't read that one yet. Another piece of manga news, a manga publisher demanding that Twitter give up info on some of their, like the contact info and real names and stuff of some of the people using the platform. So Shueisha, they publish Shonen Jump, Weekly Shonen Jump, which of course has things like One Piece and Naruto and of course, like, everything else. They've got everything. What am I even trying to say? Like, they've got everything. A suit was filed in California on December 30th, and it claims that the company's rights were violated by two accounts, specifically Spoiler Plus and Manga Raw _JP. And they posted spoilers about One Piece. Specifically, they showed pages from the mangas from Japan. The Spoiler Plus account has already been suspended by Twitter. Manga Raw's page is still up, and it shows like the original pages with links back to their Piracy site. Japan takes piracy way more seriously than America does. Way more seriously. They're loose with how they protect, their property from things like, say, fan-made manga. They allow a lot of that. But if you just show their manga or anime and stuff like that, their movies, they come after you hardcore. They definitely believe in protecting their intellectual property rights. So in December, the Japanese government actually allocated $2 million to its supplementary budget proposal. That's a project that's going to have AI trained to look for people violating their copyrights. I'll say, I've been very careful when I review manga. There are a lot of things I do there. First, you need to be sure that you are not just recapping, that you are really adding criticism and only using the most specific images you can. Like it's why I do so many fewer manga episodes of Comic Tropes. It takes a lot more editing work because you have to be very specific with what you choose. And a lot of times you'll want to like white out the dialogue just to show that you're making some efforts towards not spoiling everything about it and that you're not making it something where somebody can just get the gist of the story. Earlier on in my YouTubing career, one thing I also decided very intentionally to do was to record an episode at a YouTube studio, which happened to be in Japan, about a very popular manga. And I was like, if I can get this approved by YouTube and their lawyers, they're in Japan, then I know that I'm doing it right and I should be okay to create more episodes like that. So that was something I very intentionally decided to do. Do I think it's right? I don't know. I'm just saying it is what it is. On this channel, Jim Mafood and I have the show Trash Movie Bonanza, and we reviewed a Japanese movie called House. It instantly got claimed, and we had to make like big edits where I basically turned almost every bit of footage into still frames so that we could like discuss the movie properly. Not every time, not every manga, not every show, not every movie, but I'll just say that they're way tougher than US companies Way tougher. How popular are American comics in Japan? Not invisible or super small, but not as popular. They do like they like getting trade paperbacks of a collected full story as compared to like just getting the monthly issues all the time. There will be a couple stores that import the actual like English floppies. I know Blister was one I remember in Tokyo, and there's another one that I've been to that it's just not coming to me right now. And they like to do their own versions where they license some of our superheroes, but generally they want a complete story. So they'll do translations of like, a thick trade paperback or graphic novel, but they don't do much in the way of like this format, like the floppy. They don't do that too much. Moving on. Last piece of news I'll have is about a nonfiction comic about Gaza. So, there was recently a documentary about Art Spiegelman, best known, I think, for his Pulitzer Prize winning work in Mouse, but also, worked in lots of underground comic stuff. Raw Magazine, for instance, he was the publisher of. Worked for many years at Topps trading card company, creating all sorts of things, including Garbage Pail Kids. Huge history in comics. So there was a documentary about him, and he was there. And at the event, talking to reporters and stuff, he said that his next project was going to be about Gaza, and he was collaborating with Joe Sacco. And Joe Sacco does a bunch of nonfiction comics, a lot of travelogues, including, I think, a really good one. It's a little older now, but he visited Palestine, and he talks like to all sorts of different people and just tells what it was like there. So anyway, those two are huge names to work together. So news sources basically, they sort of exaggerated this news right away, okay? So they began reporting that it would be a graphic novel, and they reported that Spiegelman was saying that he was going to have a hell of a time finding a publisher for it. This past week, Spiegelman wrote specifically to Bleeding Cool to help clarify what he's talking about. Specifically, he explained it is only a 3-page comic that they are working on together. And so that would be part of the problem of finding where it would be published. It's very short. It's just based on their phone calls together about Gaza. So a short comic is all he's talking about. He's like, that would really be stretching the definition of graphic novel. He's like, I'm talking about a 3-page story. But I would like to read it. I would find their take on things very interesting. Yeah. A lot of interesting news this week, mostly little things, but I had some fun with it. And I'll take a quick look, too, at some of the comics that came out this week, and then we can draw. So we'll do all sorts of fun stuff still. Lots of segments to come. Let me get this in focus. There we go. Put that there. Move some comics over. I hope you guys are ready. There we go. I only picked up 3 comics this week. How about anybody out there? Did anybody have a big week for comics? Saga came out. It gets the occasional delay, but as usual, I loved it, and I loved it specifically because of a cool twist to the story. I'm not going to talk about every aspect, but okay. So the main character, Alana, and her daughter are hiding out with a space carnival, okay? And she's been getting close with the cook. But we know that the cook is reporting on Alana to somebody. And this whole time, I've been assuming that this guy works for one of the 2 governments that is trying to hunt down Alana. But in this, he explains that he's actually not, it's not for the government. he's a private investigator trying to find her for her father. And so I was like, oh, that my kitty's got their mitts on the sweater. What do I have? Fuzz on me? I liked it right now because it's this is a book that can be funny but has a lot of dark stuff, and I was really afraid that things were about to go really bad with, like, you know, one evil government or another arresting Alana or separating her from her kid, torturing her, something like that. And to find out that, like, it's a private investigator trying to reunite her with her father, I was like, okay, that's actually a bit of a relief right now, because things have been rough and I just could really use a little bit of a breather before things get super bad. No. I think that they established as recently as something like 6 issues ago, that Alana came from a very wealthy family, and she was just rebelling, and that's why she signed up for the military. She was like rebelling against her rich father, but I don't think that there's ever been any hint that he was dead. No. So anyway, I thought that it was a great issue of Saga. There's definitely a bunch of other stuff I could talk about, but I would really just be describing the plot. And I'll just give you an idea. I personally also really like Fiona Staples' artwork. It might not be for everybody. I suppose you could say that about any art, but I think she's great. I think she's expressive, just a little bit cartoony, but has really original designs, and like the expressions from the characters are always very believable. They're very real. I like this stuff a lot. Well, her father is kind of terrible. He's not going to be perfect, I guess, but it probably won't turn into the darkest part of this series. So I'll spend a little bit more time talking about the next 2 books that I have. Let me actually expand the view so that I can show both of these. So I've been enjoying, in large part, the Ultimate Universe and the Absolute Universe. Marvel, DC. Both of them are doing books set in a new continuity, taking their characters and doing new things with them at the same time. Kind of interesting. Marvel got a little bit of a head start by about half a year, but still, they're both doing that. The interesting thing about both of these is that there's also like the regular ongoing continuity in both Marvel and DC for their superhero stuff, okay? So to create each of these sort of parallel universes, we got a little bit of backstory. For this, the Absolute Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman books, and Martian Manhunter and stuff like that now, Darkseid, the evil god Darkseid, found a way to sort of move himself into another universe and influence that universe. So this universe is a little darker, a little tougher. And then in this universe, an evil version of Reed Richards also went into a parallel universe and went back in time and prevented superheroes from being created in the 60s and reshaped all of society. So both of these involve a supervillain reshaping a world into a dark, perverted version of itself. And the superheroes are underdogs that are trying to make the world a better place. But what's interesting is that they're not specifically in our world. It looks like our world in many ways, but we're also told that there's behind the scenes stuff where villains have shaped, fate and put it on a dark path. And I don't think either one of them is intentionally copying the other. I really don't. I think that this is parallel thinking by a bunch of creators. And it makes me go, oh, I think that this is an interesting example of artists reacting to what they perceive as the world around us. It can be very easy, I would argue, to see that the world isn't as good as it should be, or that we have things that are out of our control shaping our destinies. Like that there are these feelings, Ultimate Spider-Man is a book all about, a Spider-Man whose destiny was taken from him. And he's got a wonderful life. He's married to MJ, has 2 kids, has a good job, but he was supposed to be a hero. And now he's got the ability to be that hero, but it's happening later in life. And it's like his destiny wasn't really available to him. Just an interesting idea, I think, that both of them are dealing with the same ideas on a very high level. The specific stories, there's not enough threads that I could say, oh yeah, Ultimate Spider-Man and Ultimate Wonder Woman are, going after the same ideas, anything like that. I couldn't do that. And I'm glad, because I am enjoying both. Even though we're told that they're in a dark world, I think it does sort of make our heroes a little more likable, that they're working hard to correct something that maybe they actually could correct. If they defeat these villains, they'd basically be able to get their society to something like what we live in. Like, they're living in a worse world in some ways. Absolute Superman might not be my favorite of the 3. Well, it isn't. Absolute Wonder Woman is. Absolute Wonder Woman is awesome. But I do love how different this is going, and yet how still recognizable Superman is. This is, again, mostly telling us about young Kal-El's life growing up on Krypton. His father is brilliant, but won't follow the hierarchy. Krypton is run by scientists, and everybody wants to just go to the best schools and become a scientist and be part of the elite that govern the world. And Superman's father and his mother are definitely smart enough, but they're like iconoclasts, and they're going their own way. Anyway, of course, Jor-El understands that the world is being destroyed and stuff, and is quietly working with his wife to create a way that they can get off of the planet. Let me get to this one cool thing. Oh, yeah, here. Kal-El, I keep wanting to call him Clark. Kal-El is like, I figured out like the secret that you're hiding from me. He's like, this world is dying, and you're trying to build a spaceship, and you're intending to send me off into space all by myself. And they're like, no, we would never do that. We're building a ship that's like big enough for like all of at least our community, all of our fellow farmers and neighbors and stuff like that. And we've been trying to tell the government to warn them. And you know what they learn in this? That the government, the highest, the elite, did believe Jor-El's warnings, and they created ships just for themselves, but they won't warn the populace. Oh my God. So it becomes a class war type of a book. And I think that that's a much more nuanced perception these days of what separates any of us politically. It's more about income inequalities and class divisions than anything else. So even though this is sci-fi, talking about those class divisions, I feel is quite relevant and not like, forcing me to think necessarily anything specific. It's just getting me to think about it. I mean, I guess the elites are sort of the bad guys, but I mean, are any of us in the elites, and are any of us so into being part of the elites that we'd be offended by that idea? I don't know. So it's fun, and the artwork by Rafa Sandoval is quite good. I will say that. I like this 2-page spread of long panels. It's Kal-El going across the countryside and realizing that something is poisoning the earth. I found this just driving by the lake and seeing all these dead fish was quite effective, especially because one day, I have a koi pond, and one day like something killed them all, and I came out to like all my beautiful fish just floating like that, and it's still like a really depressing image that's like in my head that I think about, and seeing that like I used to just think of fish as nothing but like, okay, sometimes they're pretty, sometimes they're food, but as soon as I had like about 20 beautiful koi to take care of, I started like actually caring for them. I gave them all names. I would pat them on the head. It was nice. So I see dead fish and it actually makes me sad now. That might just be me, but it worked. All right. So, sorry, I talked a lot without addressing anything you folks were saying. Yeah, Krypton is a little bit like Norrin Rad, or really vice versa, maybe. Yeah, some real world stuff in there for sure. What else? Preach, thank you. Jason Aaron's been doing pretty well. I think a lot of people find him hit and miss. I think I even find him hit and miss, but I enjoy Absolute Superman, and I do like what he's building with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, actually. The last 2 issues that I've read of that have been really getting me excited about it. Yeah, he built a relevant version of Krypton. An interesting callback to the original Superman stories where he is the champion of the oppressed. Exactly. It really is going back to the early ideas. The original Superman was going after slumlords and shoddy used car makers or sellers and stuff like that. He was going after like anybody that like impacted the working class. It was really cool. So, oh, good. I'm glad to hear that you find it interesting enough to pick up. Yeah, I think you'll like it. Exactly. And I wouldn't quite call it journalism yet, but I'd at least call it a love of writing and investigation. So it's like I see the seeds of how Kal-El could become a journalist one day. He isn't yet in this story, but you're seeing why he would want to do that stuff, and they've built it quite well. Oh yeah, I just gotta say, yes, Bug Wars. I won't spoil anything. It's cool. Yes, it was amazing. Like, okay, and then I'll talk about the Ultimates. One thing I've liked about the Ultimates is every issue of this has really focused in large part on a different member of the team. There will be interaction amongst them, but it does stuff so that like we get to know each character pretty well, as compared to just, hey, it's issue 6, it's time for all the good guys to go up against Thanos or something like that. There has been action, there always is, but it's mostly still about world building, and it doesn't feel like it's going slow. It feels like it's going at the perfect pace for me. This one focuses a bit more on America Chavez, Miss America. In this version, she arrived to the Ultimates with amnesia. She can't remember her past. Well, her friends come to find her, and her friends are the very far future version of the Guardians of the Galaxy. Captain Marvel, Star-Lord, Ultimate Nullifier, Cosmo. And it turns out that, they came to rescue her. That America Chavez fell within this certain area of time that they could not access because the Maker had set up his kingdom. Now they finally can, since the Maker's out of the picture. And they get into a fight, like saying like, hey, we're taking her. And the Avengers are like, you're not taking her. Like, we don't know you. And America's like, I'm not going with you. I don't know you. Now, ultimately, this is a very tropey thing about superheroes. We've got 2 good guys that fight. We get some interesting back and forth. And then there's a resolution where they're like sort of elated for a common interest. What's cool about this is even once I'm trying to find where I can talk about it. There's a page in here where America, she accepts. She doesn't remember what happened to her, but she has shared the memories of Captain Marvel. So she sort of knows who she is from somebody else's perspective. And she goes, look, you guys seem great. I believe that I was even in love with you and could love you again. But you know what? I don't remember that. I remember these people. These are my friends. I'm going to stay here and do good. Like, I believe in what we're doing here and right now. And it's really interesting to me, because that starts asking the question, are we the same person as we were 10, 20 years ago, whether we remember or not. And in a lot of ways, no, of course we're not. Like every day, we're in some ways a little bit of a different person than we were before because of our experiences or potentially our lack of experiences. I think that's a really interesting idea to confront head on by saying, okay, the character has amnesia and she's told about her past, but now she's got her present and she decides to stay with her present because it's now what she knows. And I don't think it's a negative or a dark thing at all. It's not really presented as a sad thing. It's presented as a positive thing. Like she's just like, this is just who I am now, you know? And the Guardians basically are able to leave peacefully. I'm not going to give every single story beat away. But I love that idea. I love thinking about that idea of, would we make the same decisions today as we would a month ago? Well, almost definitely not, because we gain experience. And if we look back with hindsight, of course, we're going to make different decisions. But what if we took away those memories, but we still had like the same personality? Would we still make the same decisions? And then it's almost the flip of a coin. You're just saying like, well, there's just, it's another version of myself. And I have to go with what I really know now. I can't just dedicate my whole life to what somebody else wants me to be. I have to live my life based on what I know. I don't know. I don't have a clear thing to say, I suppose, about exactly what this is trying to say. Just some ideas that it brought to the front of my mind. And I really like the thinking. I like the thinking of, this version of America Chavez is the same version. She just doesn't have all these memories, but she's deciding to stay in the here and now and do what she knows. I don't know. I liked it. I'm curious if anybody else has any big thoughts. The dialogue on that one Guardian about Doom and Iron Lad, one being the destroyer and the other is the savior. Yes. So, right, they come from the far future, and at one point they see a character and they're like, if only I remembered the past. He's like, you're either the person that like saves tons of lives or like one day ends a trillion lives. I really wish I could remember which one, but I didn't think that was going to be important. America has a short memory in real life. Ooh, I didn't even think about how that could be a metaphor. I didn't even think about that. Anyway, I've been enjoying every issue of the Ultimates because each one is giving me something a little different. So I really like it. When I first saw this cover, I thought that, since we were going to get Star-Lord, I thought this was Star-Lord, 2 guns. That's what, but this is called Ultimate Nullifier. Anyway, so let's draw a little and just talk about whatever interests all of you. This is a page from my hypothetical, we'll see if it comes out well, but my hypothetical comic about being a superhero for a year. And what's happening here, before I start drawing it all in, is, so I was like dressing up as a superhero with Phoenix Jones for like a full year, but maybe a little less, to be honest. Although I still kept in touch with all of those guys for over a year. And sorry, I'm just mapping something out here. So that was the silly thing that I did for a long time, right? On May Day, May 1st, there's always this big parade here in Seattle by the workers, the laborers. And unfortunately, because that's, sort of a big event and everything, there's also a bunch of anarchists in the Pacific Northwest, and they would always come out each year, and at the end of the parade, they'd try to cause chaos. They'd smash business windows or, they'd be wearing masks and they'd try to create little riots and stuff like that. And the year before I did this, all this goofy stuff, Phoenix Jones, our city's real life superhero, and his team had defended the city courthouse against some anarchists that were throwing rocks and smoke bombs and things like that. Okay. So they were anticipating that this year that I was going with them, that day would be just as chaotic and big. And without telling every detail of what happened that day, it just involved a hell of a lot of hiking for miles and miles in our superhero gear. And Phoenix had insisted on this rule that we all had to wear these thick boots that were puncture proof, so that, if we were in dangerous areas, like we wouldn't like step on a nail and get hurt. But effectively, what that means is that in the hot summer weather of May, I'm walking for miles upon miles in these thick, heavy boots. And when I finally get home at the end of the night and take off my boot, my foot, without like knowing, it had gotten all these blisters, and the blisters had popped, and my foot was bloody. It was bad. It was so gross. And I was like, oh my God, like, what did I actually accomplish today? And was it truly worth, the physical price that I am now going to pay for a couple weeks while I recover? I was like, this might not have been a very good idea, honestly. So that was the day that I started thinking that, maybe it wasn't a great idea to do what I was doing. And so, like, I'm going to if I do this comic, I think I'll have, like, the first page be a splash page with some caption boxes and just showing me, like, sitting on the edge of the tub, like, when I was peeling off my boot and going, like, I may have made a huge mistake. This doesn't necessarily make sense. But, I had moved across the country to a new city for a new job, and I didn't really know many people out here. Phoenix Jones was one of about like 3 people that I knew out here. And so I was hanging out with him a little bit, and I just sort of naturally just decided to start doing what he was doing, dressing up in body armor, bulletproof vest, a mask, and like patrolling. And I think we did do some good, to be honest. I think I've got some stories that I can tell where I helped people that were lost. I helped people that were injured, things like that. I really did. But I also sort of realized I was like, but I don't have to be going around in a costume at night to accomplish these things. These are all things that I would have done whether I was wearing this outfit or not. I just, that's all it is. It's sort of like realizing that there are different ways to accomplish good. It was still an interesting time where I got into some really wacky adventures. The title should be Omega Watch. I was thinking of calling it My Superhero Year. Oh yeah, it was a lot of pain. It was a lot of pain. Thank you. It is a bathroom. Phoenix was in the news a few years ago. Phoenix, I don't know everything that's happened in his life, but I'll tell you that one thing is he definitely got caught trying to sell drugs to an undercover police officer. It was like a sting. And he always told me that he was straight edge. And at first, of course, I believed him. He's a very kind person in person. He's very charismatic. There's a lot, like, there was no reason I had to doubt what he was telling me until he never managed his own social media for the most part. And he gave me the access to all of his social accounts and emails and stuff, and was just like, hey, can you read this and recap it for me? Or if I send you an image from my phone and I ask you to post it, will you? And I was like, if that's what you want me to do, sure. And I thought that he was just giving me stuff that was only to do with Phoenix Jones. Come to find out, like, there were all these emails coming in. He was like in a committed relationship at the time, but he was hitting up girls on like I don't know, like Craigslist and stuff like that, asking to like, just sleep with them. And he would like talking to people about like, well, let's do some Molly tonight or this, that, and the other. And I'm going like, you're always telling me you're straight edge, but you're like, you've got all these emails coming in asking to do drugs. Like, so his life, I realized, was a little more chaotic than he was letting on. He wasn't well organized in that regard. And none of those things were things where I was like, this makes you a bad person. But it did make me feel like I don't feel like I should be hanging around with this person regularly all the time. And so, yeah, when he got busted for selling drugs, I go, okay, I don't think he was doing anything like that when I knew him, but I knew he was at least around it a little bit. And I was disappointed. But I don't know the whole story. I'm sure he's got an excuse or something, but I don't know. I was done. But you know what? It wasn't even really Phoenix that like drove me away. It was like a lot of the crew that he hung out with, who I just like sensed that they were dangerous. They wanted to get into like fights and stuff. They wanted to like get attention, but there was one guy who always wanted to take knives with him, and all of us were like, no, you can't take that. Like, we're running around with masks on. You cannot do that. Yeah, so like we just knew that, or I knew, I should say, that like something bad could happen if I kept hanging out with these people, and I did not want to be involved on any level with that. But there's a lot of stories. Like there's too much for me to just sort of like riff on right now. I'm just saying that there were so many stories that, yeah, it could support a whole comic. So maybe we'll see. Let's see how this page comes out before I make any big decisions. Well, yeah, everybody's got feet of clay at some point, right? Yeah, I think it was cocaine, if I remember the news story correctly. If I remember the news story correctly. But I could talk about, like who sort of each of these people were that wanted to do things. I could talk about some of the like actual adventures, because there were fights, there were car chases, there was times where I had to administer first aid. There were times where I felt real good about one time. It was New Year's Eve evening, and we were like, it's a pretty wild night. We were patrolling around the Capitol Hill area of Seattle, and I came across a guy who was like, "Oh, Phoenix, I recognize you," and he was like, "Oh," and he only spoke Spanish, and my Spanish is rudimentary, but if I go slow enough, I can get by. And nobody else on the team spoke Spanish, but the guy like knew a little bit of English, and I knew a little bit of Spanish, and so we were able to communicate. And basically, he had been separated from his girlfriend, and his girlfriend didn't have a cell phone on her, so he gave us his cell phone number and a description of the girl. And I just kept my eye open. And a couple hours later, I see a girl that matches the description in a subway. I was like, oh, that literally really looks like her. And I went in, and she also only spoke Spanish. But I was like, geez, now I'm trying to like remember it. And I've forgotten some of the vocabulary, like boyfriend and girlfriend. I've forgotten. But I knew the words then. This was like 10 years ago. Was a while ago. And it was the girl. And so I called the boyfriend, and eventually he got there, and they got reunited. And I was like, I felt good about that, because she was lost. She was scared. You could tell she had just gone into a business because she didn't know where to go or how to find anyone. She was from out of town. And I was like, I felt good about it. Oh yeah, Novio. Thank you, everybody. You're much better. There's a self-proclaimed superhero called Seattle Smith in Arizona. I don't know that one. I wasn't doing YouTube back then. I had a Monday through Friday day job, and but I was 10 years younger and I was in much better shape, so I didn't get tired as bad. Um, yeah, I there was an era where I actually like worked out like crazy and took Krav Maga for a long time, and so yeah, I was just a different person is all. I didn't expect to talk about this much, but I guess it makes sense if that's sort of what I'm drawing, and I'm just trying to be upfront and honest about my silly little stories. So next week I will do the show again like normal from here. The week after that, I will attempt to do a show. I will be in Hawaii visiting family, so I'll be doing that one remotely. And then the week after that, Chrissy and I will be in Japan. And again, I'm going to try to do a live stream because they're fun. But the timing of it, like next week, same time as usual. But the next 2 weeks, I'll be in different time zones, so I don't know exactly. I would just say that, like, if you want to know and you want to watch the show, hit that notification bell as well as subscribe, so that like you can see when the show's coming. Yeah, exactly. I didn't want to intimidate you guys. The Tale of One Bad Rat. No, I don't think I've heard about that one. Yes, exactly. I was part of the Rain City superhero movement, which I always thought was a bad name because if you just take those letters, it sounds like you're saying racism. I was like, what kind of a superhero? Like, I was always arguing. I was like, Rain City superhero movement. I was like, can we please change that to like anything else? I was like trying to come up with like, I was like, okay, Seattle. I was like, we could like come up with like, letters for slam or smash or something along those lines. You know what I mean? No, it's about 2 hours behind the West Coast. Who am I? You sure you want to know? If I told you that I was just a normal guy and not a superhero, I'd be lying. Oh, my hero name was just Omega. Um, yeah, I'm in a few documentaries and stuff that are out there in the world, including we were on ESPN. There was a 30-minute show about Phoenix there, and they interviewed me. I wore a version of my suit that, in retrospect, is not super flattering. Oh well. Live and learn. Any funny stories about filming a cold open or something in public in the early comic tropes days? Yeah, one. It was like the second or third episode I made. I decided to do some fireworks because it was like I was talking about Captain America, Golden Age Captain America, around the 4th of July. And when I set them off, some of them sort of shot towards my then girlfriend, now wife, who was recording me setting them off at like a riverbank. And you can hear her go, ah! It was just kind of funny. It is a raised ruler. Where we go? Yeah. It is raised so that I don't smear the ink all around. No smearing of inks. Now, I didn't hit her or anything, but it is just kind of like funny to think back. And I was like, oh, wasn't being careful. Whatever, just nearly murdering my wife. It happens, right? We've all been there. I don't know. I guess I don't think I've like ever recorded something where I was like caught doing something weird in public. I don't think. Can't think of anything embarrassing like that. It would make for a good story, but can't really think of anything. It's a fun question to think about, but yeah, I can't think of anything good. Ah, well. Let me just make sure that this. Does that work? Yeah. Okay. All right. Questions. I was a bouncer for years, and I would much rather be a real life superhero than ever do that again. What did people think when you were running around London? Oh, that's right. I did sort of run around like a crazy man in London for my Judge Dredd episode. I think that there were so many people in public where I was that I didn't really get much of a reaction. Huh. Didn't think about that. I think that there are. I don't think it's as popular now. I honestly think that that movie Kick-Ass, not even the comic, but the movie, I think that that made a bunch of people try it for a while because at one point when I was doing the superhero thing, there were 3 different superhero teams. It was so dumb. Like there was over a dozen of us running around Seattle. Uh, it was a lot. It was a lot. There's this one guy who was just kind of weird. He wasn't really part of our team, but sometimes we'd let him come with us when it was not for patrolling, but for like doing homeless handouts, because that should be a lot safer. We would let him come for stuff like that here and there. His name was, I want to say Skyman. And he was a really large gentleman who may have had some sort of learning disabilities. I'm not 100% sure about that. He may have just been unique. I don't know. So anyway, one time I invited him to a homeless handout event that I was organizing for the evening. And he came along with us and he bought this light up kid's lightsaber toy from a street vendor along the way, and he's like swinging and playing with it as like the rest of us are like walking around with bags full of groceries. And oh, it was so embarrassing. That also was like, I was like, oh my god, I do not want to be doing this anymore. Like what am I even doing? Like this is embarrassing. The fact that the others weren't embarrassed is like also, I was like, what, you guys are acting like you're so tough and you want to carry knives and you want to get into MMA fights, but you're somehow not humiliated by like this guy running around with a toy tonight. Oh, I felt terrible. I did not like that at all. Oh well. It's funny in retrospect. At the time, I was like, "This is humiliating. I'm done. I'm. What are we doing? I can give out like I can volunteer at the local soup kitchen or something. I do not have to do it this way." Yes, exactly. At least I had a mask on. Oh my god. I really don't know. I'm not plugged into that community at all anymore. So there probably are, but I have no idea. I don't blame you. It was cringe. It was cringe. I'm really interested, so I'm going to ask again. If you could have dinner with any 5 cartoonists, alive or dead, who would they be? Jack Kirby, Steve Ditko, Frank Frazetta, Naoki Urasawa, Daniel Warren Johnson. I just went old and new. Nobody in the middle. I don't know. Oh, man. I'll take it. Stray Bullets is fantastic. Love Stray Bullets. That's one that I've wanted to talk about on my show, Comic Tropes, but it's so big. It's sort of like, what's the entry point and what's the angle that I'm going to discuss, But then again, I'm like, okay, don't have to recap it all, but you need to give people enough of an understanding to know what you're talking about. So it's tricky. Tricky. Here we go. Yeah, I think I've always heard that Steve Ditko's really. Everybody said that he was pretty easy to talk to if you got to know him, and he was really kind. Can understand wanting to talk to somebody like John Byrne. I'm sure he's got a lot. Ooh, Mobius would be a really good addition. It's a cool idea. It's a cool suggestion. Harriman? George Harriman? Yeah. Yeah, George Harriman would totally be interesting to talk to, actually. 5 Mark Grunwalds. Everybody liked Mark, so yeah, I get that. Bill Finger and Akira Toriyama. Eclectic. I like it. These are cool. Tom Palmer, Gene Colan, Dwayne McDuffie, Marie Severin. Early Bronze Age, late Silver Age Marvel goodness, for the most part. Kirby, Mobius, Darrow, Pope, Atomo. I'll pass on Bill Jemas, but thank you. Wondered if it's somewhat autobiographical? I don't know. I don't know that it is, but it's an interesting idea. Joe Maneely, sure. Toth, Allred, Corbin, Ditko. Yeah, I've seen that documentary, yep. Yes. Some of these people I have been lucky enough to meet, So that's why I didn't have them on my list. And you know what? Now that I say that, that means that, even though I love talking to Daniel Warren Johnson, I've talked to him a bunch of times, so I should swap him out with somebody else from the 70s or 80s. Sorry I am late. You never have to be sorry. Buy yourself 2 sugar-free Mountain Dew Baja Blasts. Also, Kirby, Tezuka, Otto Binder, and Ditko. Nice choice. That's a good mix. And I bet you that they'd all respect each other for the most part. Ditko would be the odd one out, but I think that Binder, Tezuka, and Kirby would have a raucous conversation. Didn't Toth have a reputation for not being the nicest guy? Not necessarily that, so much as a harsh critic, I guess is one way to put it. Alex Raymond, Hal Foster, Roy Crane, kind of good depot, but fits with this. Milt Caniff, Noel Sickles. Some pretty influential people. Lopez, Pervs, Barry Windsor Smith, Hergé Uderzo, Jim Lee, Neil Adams, Dan Mora. These are great. Jamie Hewlett. Oh, yeah, I bet you're right. He's got to have stuff to talk about. Otto Binder seems like a cool, fascinating guy, yeah. I don't think that they'd argue too much. I don't know. I don't think so. I think that they'd have shared stuff to talk about. Because even towards the end, Kirby and Lee could still have some pretty friendly conversations. they gripe about each other, especially Kirby about Lee, but they could get along in person. So it was a complex relationship. Rumiko Takahashi. Yeah. Oh, Laird and Eastman. That could be fun. Daniel Clowes. Will Eisner. Love that. Michael Golden. Sorry. Sal Buscema. Rich Buckler. Ron Friends. I can't keep highlighting. I won't get to draw anything. You guys and gals and all have some really lovely ideas for mixing it up. You know, maybe I should consider, if I was to do it, one of two things. Either a theme, like people that like have some sort of shared type of approach so that like we could ping it against each other, or people that were just known for being really funny and good conversationalists, as compared to just, these are my 5 favorite artists. Like, think of how to like actually put together a successful dinner, since that's the idea, is like we're having dinner together. So the more I think about it, the more I lean towards thinking it would be cool to have just a themed evening. What do you think I should do in Japan? Any suggestions? I think Chrissy and I have some pretty good ideas. We'll probably see a sumo championship thing this time. Maybe take the class like Mitsugi or noodle making. I don't know. What should I do? Mike Waringo was definitely a beloved guy, yeah. Have a fun time and relax. I love that idea. Maybe that could be fun, just doing the create a noodle thing. Definitely going to Tokyo. Might go to Osaka for a day or so. Yeah, because we like it there too. This is a relatively short trip, like I think 10 days in Japan. No, I haven't, but I have to admit, I don't know a whole lot about Sailor Moon. Just not something I know much about. If there was somebody else that was like able to sort of like pick topics and do the editing, I would love to sit in and do like, a video game podcast or something, but I wouldn't have the bandwidth to do my own sort of essays or editing for something like that. I just wouldn't have the time. Can you do a video on where to find English translated manga in Japan? English translated manga there? It'd be the same stuff that you see here. There's nothing that they have that we don't for English. There's nowhere else. Like you would, it's not like they get it early or anything. So you either get it in Japanese or you get it when it's officially released over here. Zip line into Godzilla's mouth. If I was staying in Osaka the whole time, I could do that. That theme park is not super far from Osaka. It's pretty far from Tokyo, so I don't think I have time to do it. I would totally do it though. But I think that there is a Godzilla exhibition at the government building in Tokyo. So I'll do some Godzilla related stuff. I love Godzilla. We did that last time. We rented a car and I drove deep into the mountains of Shirakawa-go, which is actually super small town. Still, the housing there looks like Edo period Japan with thatched roofs. Gorgeous, lovely, hot springs. Had a great time, but probably not this time. The World of Masumi Shiro, Ghost in the Shell exhibition to be held in spring. Well, I won't be there in spring, unfortunately. Sumo should be fun. I don't think I'll rob a bank. I don't think I will. Oh, I would if I could. Yeah. Nice. Is there? Um, Osaka is cool because people there are way chattier. It's got a fascinating history to it where Osaka was more of a port town, a trader's town, a lot of sailors and stuff like that, including people from, both out of the city and out of the country. So, in general, the people there are actually more outgoing. It's quite charming. I love it there. I fell for Osaka in a big way. Uh, oh, if we do, it'll only really be a day, and even then, it would mostly be so that I could see a friend of mine that lives there. But we'll see. I am not going to stay at the Hotel Gracery, but I might be in the area to walk by and take pictures. Yeah. Is there a Transformers museum? I've never heard of that. I usually can get like some good Kobe beef. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that, Steve. Definitely wishing that you feel better. Sorry to hear that you're not well. I hope it passes quickly. I will go to those at some point. It's a little too far for this amount of time. Like I say, only 10 days doesn't give me quite enough time to get all the way down that far south and back and everything. But it is something I will do someday. There's a lot of things that I still want to do in Japan. The more I go, the more I realize I need to go further out and stuff. Nara's awesome. Visit Toho Studios. Yeah, maybe I'll just get a job as Godzilla, right? Come on, hire me. Hire me. I know Godzilla pretty well. Hire me. I've never really paused to consider like why it is that I like Godzilla as much as I do. I don't know. Sometimes it doesn't matter. Sometimes you just like things because you like them and you don't have to figure it out. What comics did you folks read this week aside from the three that I was chit chatting away about? There any big ones that I'm missing out on? Would you say? Pause right now and figure it out. No, 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 no. No, I don't want to talk to those guys anymore. I don't think. I'd talk to Phoenix if I bumped into him. But I don't need to see the rest of them. Maybe I do. Batman Full Moon is the most fun for me right now. That's the one like with the werewolf type story, right? That's cool. Oh man, such a good run. Such a good run. Bone. Can't go wrong there. Oh, is that what that's like with three different Atom superheroes, right? Nice. Glad to hear that you picked that one up. I hope you love it. Hyde Street. Deadpool, Wolverine #1, and Batman. Three Rocks by Bill Griffith. Very cool. Still waiting for the 12th volume of Kaiju #8. I thought it was out. Captain Atom and Friends. Not new, but I'm reading America versus JSA. Okay. Yeah, right on. Right on. Can you dig it? Right on. Just playing around with some techniques right now, seeing what it looks like. If I don't just black it all out, if I leave some texture intentionally. I don't know if it'll look good or not yet. Metamorpho was fun. The Cat 1 through 4. First Greer Nelson. Okay. Metamorpho. Watching Creature. Oh, I need to catch up on Creature Commandos. Last Halloween was 2 weeks ago, but yeah. Ahoy's Wrong Earth and My Bad. My Bad is really good. Oh, and I'm glad that you like Monster Beast Theater. It's different. It's so cool. Metamorpho is 2 read. Got it. Interesting perspective. Yeah, it's not quite a wide angle lens, but it's definitely an extreme perspective on things. It's definitely an intentionally extreme perspective. Anyway, thank you for the kind words. Sorry, I guess I get quiet the more I focus on the art. So, if that's how I'm going to be as host, maybe I should wrap it up. I don't know. Almost midnight here, so I'm going away. Thank you for stopping by. Very nice of you. Romance comics. Heartstopper's good. I've heard some people saying that they like Dust to Dust. Yep. I haven't. No. Is there anything you find difficult to draw? Anything that's like complex, like a car or knight armor, I definitely would have to look at reference for sure. I don't know that stuff just in my head. Slain is good. The newest printing is good. Nice. I always thought it was pronounced Slanya, like because I think it's Welsh or something, but apparently it's intended to be pronounced Slain. You think Image Comics would become the third superhero comic company if Extreme Studios and Wildstorm didn't break away, or would they still be doing indie stuff? I don't know that they are doing indie stuff. I mean, is Radiant Black and Invincible, Walking Dead, is that really indie? I don't know. I've never really considered Image indie. Would they be doing more superhero stuff if Liefeld and Lee were still there? Maybe. I think that Lee would have wanted to start experimenting with other stuff. But yeah, there'd probably be a little bit more superhero stuff. Comics about punk and hardcore. Boy, I know I've read some. Let me think for a sec. I think Blackheart Billy. Blackheart Billy would be one. Boy, punk and hardcore. I'd have to think about that some more. No, he didn't explain what it was quite yet, no. You also don't consider Image Indie? They got a pretty good market share right off the bat and have always had like at least a good handful of some of the top artists and writers in the business. So I don't think that they're that out there. He's doing Battle Beast with Ryan Ottley. Celtic, that's right. Slanya. But I guess the book is actually intended to be pronounced Slain. Girl Scouts, that's a fair. That's kind of punk, yeah. Image is indie technically, although they focus too much on genre stuff. Well, see, but to me, indie isn't a genre. Indie is the size. So, yeah, I consider, because I wouldn't consider any genre indie. I wouldn't consider, say, like, an autobio comic or a history comic. I wouldn't consider that indie, but like the publisher, the scale that it's coming out at, that's what I consider indie. But that's me. I'm not saying that's right. Oh, yeah, Jimbo by Gary Panter. Good point. That's pretty punk. Milestone, Dark Horse, Dynamite, and Boom, IDW. No, I'm not forgetting any of those guys. I would say that, like, even though they're a good size, that like a lot of Fantagraphics and Drawn and Quarterly, I'd consider indie. I'd consider anything self-published indie. I would generally agree, but that's because a zine I would classify as basically being self-published or self-printed even, as compared to, like, if it got any bigger, then it becomes a magazine. Then it might have a punk aesthetic, but it wouldn't be indie. So if Fantagraphics would become the number one publisher, they wouldn't be indie anymore? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. If everybody all of a sudden decided that their favorite books were, just esoteric comedy and reprints of stuff from the 50s, this, that, and the other, then that's no longer independent. That's mainstream, and that's big business. If it was the biggest, if they were the number one, then no, I wouldn't consider that indie. Look, I agree that there can be an indie aesthetic, okay? But that has more to do with what's popular and how much of it is printed. So I agree that there could be an aesthetic. I just wouldn't say that, like, but I would say indie is in, like, if we look at that word independent, if we really mean it, then we mean like pretty small business. Now, like, is Image as a company a big company? No. So that's a distinction. But do they have a large amount of do they have a large market share? Yes, absolutely they do. And therefore, if we add up the successes of their books, I think that we get pretty far away from indie. But again, these are just my opinions. I'm not trying to say that it's like definitive. It's an interesting enough question that I appreciate having it for the discussion tonight. I would agree with that. Those are indie publishers. It's a niche market that they're catering to. No, I wouldn't. Yeah, I don't know. And then, like, I don't know. Look, I'll say this: it is nebulous enough that if you disagree, I am willing to admit you could easily have an argument that anything from Image to Boom to Fantagraphics is or is not indie. I'm willing to concede that there are arguments that could be very strong. Um, all I'm saying is what I don't consider Image indie. I don't consider Dark Horse truly indie, but I would have considered them a little bit more indie in the earlier 80s. But I would also say that, like, if you're doing a licensed comic, you've got a certain amount of success, and it's a little harder for me to consider that an indie project. Do you guys think that 2025 will be a good year for superhero movies? Because I think we could all agree that 2025 was not overall a good comic book movie year. Joker 2 bombed really hard. Madam Web, Craven, uh, they didn't do great. Venom 3, I guess, turned a profit, but I don't know that it was very good. What else? There was a Hellboy movie. I still haven't seen it. But next year we get Superman and Fantastic Four. Maybe we'll luck out with Thunderbolts or Captain America. I don't know. I think 2025 should be better than 2024. You doubt it will be? I think that Fantastic Four and Superman have promise. No, I did not see that. I have read the comic, and the trailer like struck me as just like not getting the aesthetic right. It didn't interest me at all. I wish I could forget. I think that Superman, like, I'm inclined to be hopeful for it. Yeah, that's something that should be very good with the involvement of the creators, like, and just if you follow those stories, they just work. I think that could be a great adaptation if we're lucky. Oh, you saw Crooked Man, Hellboy Crooked Man? Hmm. Well, I don't like hearing that because I love Hellboy. I was planning on seeing it at some point. I have to admit, I did not prioritize it, uh, but I was still hoping to see it at some point. I think that TV wise, we did all right though for comic book stuff. I mean, I think that Agatha was quite good. I thought Penguin was very, very good. I've been enjoying Creature Commandos, which started just before the new year, I think. So some of the TV stuff wasn't too bad. Trying to think of anything else. Oh, The Boys. The Boys was good. I don't think so. I think that Grendel thing was just shelved. I don't think we'll ever see it realistically. No, I think if we want to see Grendel, we have to hope for a brand new project. Unfortunately, yeah. Was Guardians 3 last year? Guardians 3? No, it was in 2023. Yeah, 2024. The only Marvel project was Deadpool and Wolverine. Yeah, only one movie from Marvel. All the both the writers' strike and the pandemic just delayed them enough that they only put out one. I hope that's good. I don't know what to make of it yet. I hope that that's good. Nosferatu is overrated. His voice sounded like that Tennis Seinfeld character. I like Nosferatu. You thought it was overrated? I thought it was quite strong. I thought it was, but maybe I'm just in the bag for that director. I've enjoyed everything he's made. Robert Eggers. I really like Robert Eggers' work. You thought it was overrated. That doesn't necessarily mean bad. You just thought it was overrated, huh? I'm not sure I agree. Um, you're entitled to your opinion, but I thought visually it was incredible. A little slow in the middle, but overall, I really liked it. Oh yeah, Invincible season 3. That could be fun. Aronofsky came close to doing a few Frank Miller things. Definitely know that he did some work on Ronin, and he also worked hard on a Batman Year One. I don't know who else. Only person I can think of is Chow Yun Fat. Chow Yun Fat is Frank Einstein. That's a SpongeBob joke, right? It's at least the third best Nosferatu film. I loved it. You loved the new design. I thought so too. I thought it was so cool and disturbing and interesting. I mean, wow, just loved so much of it. I don't know what Donny Cates is up to. I would love to see him come back to making comics full time. I don't know. I don't know exactly what's going on with him. His recovery and all. I hope he's feeling well. He's been at. I saw him at a New York Comic Con, and he said he was potentially interested in being on the show at some point. Um, but I haven't followed up until I sort of hear what he's doing as his next project. Generally, I really like a lot of what Donny Cates does. I thought his Venom run was quite strong, to be honest. I really liked what he did with Venom. A character that I'm not super enamored with, but here and there he's had little runs that I've liked. I liked a lot of what Rick Remender and Tony Moore did with Venom. I liked the Donny Cates, Venom and Null stuff. Is there anything else for Venom that I really liked? Probably just his earliest appearances by McFarlane and Larson. I liked Bagley's interpretation of him, but he started getting really saturated by then, and I was getting burned out already by then. Is there a season 5? Yes, I do know that. Well, Werner Herzog's movies are fascinating. That was Klaus Kinski as Nosferatu, right? Yeah, boring. I know. Boring is a crime in any movie. Boring is what I'd say is the problem with Joker too. Normally in a musical, that music moves the story forward. The characters feel so strongly about something, they have to sing about it, but they're letting out new feelings that they've been otherwise keeping inside, and it moves things forward. Every song in Joker just stopped it dead because it was just a song for the sake of a song. I hope so. That may be my favorite Star Trek show, and I know that's probably heresy with how many good Star Treks there've been out there. I love Strange New Worlds. Venom, Venom, got that Venom. I also read All Star Superman for the millionth time because the trailer made me want to read it again. I think that I'll probably discuss that specific comic somewhere closer to when the movie comes out because I've always wanted to talk about it. So that just is a natural point to talk about it. I hope Daredevil Born Again is good. I like the cast. I liked the Netflix show. Sometimes I was frustrated that it didn't connect with Marvel in a bigger way, and now it should be able to do that. But I thought that generally Daredevil was pretty darn good. Season 1 was fantastic. I liked all of Daredevil, though. I've never watched Orville. Orville. I'm aware of it, but yeah. I'm going to call it here, and at some point I'll peck away at this some more. But just sort of trying to take my time and not make too many big mistakes. Is this quite what I had in mind when I started today? No. But you know, as long as I can be clear with what kind of a imagery and story I'm trying to tell, maybe it's not worth throwing out. Isn't that a positive way of saying things? Maybe this isn't worth throwing out. Who can say? Who can say if it's worth throwing out or not? But I appreciate you all being here and giving feedback while we talked about various comics, comic book news, etc. Like I say, next week, normal showtime and everything. The 2 weeks after that, I may have to adjust either the day or the time or both a little bit. I'd like to still do a live stream. I'm bringing some equipment so that I can live stream, but just explaining that because I'll be traveling, I could have to adjust that. So if you want to definitely see this, what I recommend is hit the subscribe button, but also the notification bell. I hope you do. And no matter what, I appreciate just having the opportunity to talk comics with all of you. There's some great stuff coming up for comics this week alone, so I'm very excited. And I'm hard at work on comic tropes. I'll just tell you, it's going to be about Frank Frazetta, and I am having a blast digging into not just his comics and artwork, but his interviews. I think that there's a lot we can learn from Frank Frazetta. He truly was a master, and I think a lot of it was instinctual, but there's so much that he does well as a craftsman, and I'm excited to share my observations with you. Yeah, it's going to be a good one, in my opinion. I'm pretty darn excited about it. But yeah, anyway, just giving you a tease as to what's coming up. I should have that ready this weekend. And also, Jim Mafood and I will be recording a new trash movie bonanza, and we are looking at another superhero film, a maligned superhero film, but I think that will be fun for everybody, sincerely. Thank you all for being here. It means a lot to me. I'll see you next week, and until then, just remember, keep reading comics. Double salute. Double salute. Bye.